Hi everyone, it's Sherry. Just making sure that we're getting everything up here on the computer because I want to be able to see your comments and talk with you, but we are here with our Timeless Tulips class. This is a very cute, and it is really timeless. I was so excited. I got a preview of the next annual catalog. This one is in it, so that makes me very happy. If you can hear me and see me in the group, would you please give me a wave or give me a thumbs up? I'm just going to adjust my camera slightly because it looks a bit crooked on my end. Okay, I'm not sure if that's going to be better or if it's exactly the same. Okay, hi Diane. Hi Carol, I'm so glad you're here. So today is the Timeless Tulips class. Like I said, we're going to be using the Timeless Tulips stamp set, which actually came out a couple of years ago. It is one of those that has been a staple in the catalog, and it has a coordinating punch. So this is the Tulip Builder punch. Again, this came out as a bundle. It coordinates perfectly. Both are still available, but they are no longer available at bundle pricing. So let's go ahead and get started with our supplies. I did pull in some really new things though to coordinate with these. So you'll see that I'm using a really unexpected designer series paper. I did not grab my annual, the mini catalog, but let me grab the papers. Okay, so you might have been a little surprised when I posted the DSP that I was going to use for this class because it's called Artfully Composed, and it has all of these gorgeous tropical prints, and they really are beautiful as is, but they definitely do not lend themselves very well to pairing them with tulips. However, they have these beautiful, what we call B-sides on the back. So these are the tropical prints. So if I flip them over and slide them in, now you can see these are the prints that I wanted to use with the tulips, and you can see why. They're such springy colors with the coral and papaya. We have this pale green, which is pear pizzazz. And then what I thought was actually going to be brighter is this really muted, distressed, just jade print. So we're using those with our tulips to get some really pretty spring cards. And I threw in a little pop of yellow by adding some So Saffron, and I also put in some of the Balmy Blue. So you get a really pretty spring color scheme there. Hi, Jean. Hi. Oh my goodness. Hello, Leslie. Hi, Jane. All right, I'm so glad you're joining me. We are going to get started. This will be the first card that we do, this one up here with the 3 tulips. Now I want to show you a variation that I did. The one that I'm doing in class today has these 3 colors of tulips. We're going to be stamping tone on tone, which means we'll use the same color ink that we're using cardstock. We'll switch that up a little bit by stamping on some white to get some different colors. But these 3 are So Saffron, Pale Papaya, and Calypso Coral. I did another variation, which is a little bit brighter, but also used all the same color of tulips. So you have a choice. Now that you've seen both, you may want to do a trio of colors like I did, or you might want to use all the same. Or you might say, ooh, I don't care for the dark background, I like the brighter one. Or you may say, oh, I love that muted one instead of the bright stripes. So a few different choices there. That will be our first card that we create. The second card is going to be this one right here, which is going to have some tone-on-tone stamping as our background. It's just a little pop coming out of the side of the DSP. And I wanted to point out that these tulips are stamped with exactly the same ink colors. So I tried to keep it simple as far as all the colors, But the difference is these are So Saffron and Pale Papaya stamped on white, and this is So Saffron and Pale Papaya stamped on those color cardstocks, and you get such a rich, deep color there. But those are exactly the same colors for the tulips. I'm also pulling in some of the ribbon. This is the white frayed ribbon. This is also from the Artfully Composed Suite, which is in the mini catalog. This is so soft. I just love the feel of it. However, it is a bit bulky, so we're not going to be using it to tie any bows. We're using it as single thickness, just as an accent. So if you don't have that trim, you could easily substitute either a strip of vellum or a piece of embossed white cardstock behind there. So you have a few different choices for that. And the final card, we're using just the smaller tulips from the stamp set. We're not going to be using the punch because that coordinates with the largest, but we're doing some a little bit of a variegated look there on our tulips. We're going to be using Pale Papaya and sponging on a bit of Calypso Coral. And with this one, we've also used that ribbon behind our sentiment strip, but with a torn, kind of distressed look there. And we're piecing a background. You can use whatever DSP colors you like. Again, with this DSP, you can see that I've gone more for the colors than the actual tropical print. So if you have other tone-on tones that you want to use, those would work perfect today. All right, we've given everybody a few minutes to hop on there. It looks like we have 9 people watching right now, which is a great start to the class. Let's go ahead and move these out of the way and get our materials. The pieces that you'll need for this card, if you were able to pop on to the event earlier, I posted all of the cutting dimensions and supplies. So this is card number 1, and we're going to be starting with a Calypso Coral card base. This is just going to be an A2 card base. So it's 8.5 by 5.5, and we'll score it in the middle so that we can just create an A2 size card. The next layer, you're going to need 2 of these because one will go inside as an insert and one will be the border here for our DSP. This is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and you'll need 2 of those. Our designer series paper is 4 inches wide by 5 1/4 inches long. Now, if you don't have a designer series paper, you could use any embossed cardstock. That would look great as well. I'm pulling in this one die cut. This is actually the only die cut that I'm using in this class, but this is from the Stitched So Sweetly dies, and I've cut this scalloped rectangle, and this little piece of DSP is going to be centered right on that. So that's how we're getting our scalloped rectangle with the dots on it. This piece of DSP is 2 1/8 by 3 1/4, and it fits perfectly inside that die cut. If you don't have this die, you could also substitute one from, we have the Scalloped Contours, which has some scalloped rectangles. You could even just do a piece of cardstock as a mat and not have the scalloped edge. I do like the scallops on there. And then we're going to need some scraps. So this is where you have a lot of choice because I'm doing a scrap for each of the colors for my tulips. And then I have a scrap of Pear Pizzazz that we'll be using for the stems and the leaves. So these are the colors that I chose. You can choose all the same or all different, but you'll only need about a 2 by 3 inch scrap of each one of the colors because that's what we'll use just to slide down into our punch. So when we put this in, you'll have to have kind of a little handle on there to be able to slide that in. We'll need a small sentiment strip. And then behind my sentiment, I've just cut these 1/8 inch pieces of cardstock. So it's going to give this little, kind of like a faux ribbon effect there. And I like to do that every once in a while for a pop of color. All right, let's get started. I'm going to grab my bone folder and we'll start creating. Just need to grab my liquid glue. You can use your tape runner. I like Stampin' Seal Plus or my Tombow liquid glue. And I'm going to put my designer series paper centered on one of these basic white panels, and then that will be centered right on the front of my card. Hi Becky, hi Deb. It's so good to see you all. Thank you for joining me today for some stamping. So this is really simple, and what a great way to use up some of your DSP that maybe it has a really subtle print and you're thinking, what will I ever do with that? This is a great way, is to create a background and then have a pop of color, have something with a little bit more interest on there, like those tulips. All right, so let's pull in our small piece of DSP and our scalloped rectangle. That will go on with flat adhesive, and then this whole layered panel will go straight onto our card front with flat adhesive. The tulips are not popped up. The sentiment and part of the leaves are popped up with dimensionals, but everything else is layered with flat adhesive today. I absolutely hated to turn my heat on in the studio today, but I had to because it was a little bit chilly. But what a nice day it started out to be. And then we got a downpour. It started pouring right before I tried to come to the studio today. And now the sun is shining again. So we'll take the sunshine. My husband and I actually went for a really long walk this morning, and it was, I think it said 37 when we left, but it felt springy. It didn't feel frigid at all, which was, it was very nice. Let's go ahead now and do our stamping. So we'll be stamping 3 tulips, 3 stems, and 2 of the leaves that we'll be punching. So we'll pull in all of those pieces of cardstock now. Now this is a photopolymer stamp set, so we're going to want something underneath our stamping surface to give it a little bit of a cushion. So we'll grab our stamp and get it mounted on our block. And now let me just grab something to put under as a cushion. I like to use the little cushion that came with my Stamparatus. So this is my foam mat, and I often use this, especially for classes here online, because it's a small portable piece and it gives just the right amount of cushioniness. All right, these are all of our colors, which look so pretty together. We're using Calypso Coral, Pale Papaya, Soft Saffron, and Pear Pizzazz for this card. We'll set aside Evening Evergreen and Balmy Blue for our later cards. I'll start with my lightest color, my soft saffron. I'm going to be a little lazy and I'm going to go from lightest to darkest, and that way I don't have to worry about cleaning my stamp either, because that So Saffron is going to come off completely on that cardstock, and now I can go to my next color. So we'll pop right on over to Pale Papaya. I agree, Cheryl. I love this tulip set. This is one of those that I am so glad that it has hung around for a few years now, so we can keep getting some more. Oh, that one, I didn't quite get the bottom there. Let's see if I can match that up. I may have to flip it over. We'll flip that right over. Don't think I pushed down enough. Perfect. All right, and we'll move on to Calypso Coral. This is one of my favorite color combinations. We actually use these in a beginner stamping class, and these two colors just look so nice together. Calypso Coral and Pale Papaya. Pale Papaya is one of our current in colors, and that one will be carrying over because it's for 2 years. However, we have some that are leaving us. One of my favorites is Misty Moonlight, so we'll have to say goodbye to that, as well as Just Jade, which we're using the cardstock today. But Just Jade, Misty Moonlight, Bumblebee, Cinnamon Cider, and Magenta Madness. Those will all be leaving us very soon. They're on the last chance while supplies last list right now, which is, that's a mouthful, but it's also where you might want to stock up on the cardstock. Make sure that you have your re-inkers for those colors and any ribbons or DSPs that you might want for those. I'm going to go ahead and punch these 3 tulips and then move on to my stems and my leaves. So this gives us just a little bit of a handle there. I guess I should have cut a little bit longer handle for that as well, but we'll make it work. Centering it, it will leave a little bit of a border around all of the edges. My yellow piece was a bit smaller than my other two. It wasn't quite the 2x3, so it's a bit of a challenge to get that in there. I try to conserve every little bit of cardstock and DSP. I don't think I'm the only one. And one more, our Calypso Coral. So you see you get these really pretty colors, really rich colors by doing the tone on tone. We'll be doing it on the white, and you'll be able to see that you get a much more subtle look, but also we can do the variegated look as well with our sponge daubers. So now that we have those, we'll set those right aside and pull in a scrap of Pear Pizzazz. Now there are 2 stems here in this stamp set. I'm just using the one that's a little bit straighter, but it really doesn't matter. You could use either one. We're going to be trimming off a lot of the stem. I'll pull in my longer block. do a couple of these. We need 3 stems, and we'll be trimming these out with scissors. So a little bit of fussy cutting, really easy fussy cutting for these. So we're just going to stamp these over here on the side. And then we need 1 of the leaves. So this set comes with 3 different leaves. This one over here on the far left will fit in the punch as well. And I've seen people use this part and stamp it with colors to do layers on top of the tulip. I'm not doing that today, but just know that that is another option for you. I'm going to use that one today for this card as a leaf so that I can use the punch as well. So we'll pull out that little curvy leaf. And we need 2 of these. Okay, now we'll pull in our scissors and we will fussy cut those stems. I'm just going to go up the side. I'm going to leave a little bit here at the top. It'll look kind of like a lollipop, so that I can use that piece to attach to the back of the tulips. So just a little bit of a straight cut up the side, a little bit of a border so that it matches our punched leaves. So when I cut this, I'm going to leave like a little tab up here at the top. It doesn't matter what it looks like, just so that I have a place to put some of my Tombow glue and glue the tulip to the top of that stem. So it's kind of like a little lollipop shape. I'm not going to worry about trimming the bottom off yet because that will all be cut off on the bottom. So we'll do that with all 3 of our tulip stems. I had to get rid of some of that scrap there on the edge. Kind of got in the way. Okay, so now we have all of our pieces for our tulips. We'll pull in our card base now. And I know that I want to have my darkest color in the back, my lighter color, my medium color here in the middle, and then my lightest one here in the front. Now, I'm going to pull in that other variation. Remember the one that I showed you that had all of the yellow ones? These I put a little bit higher on the card, and what we noticed is that it looked better to have shorter stems there. These, I just liked the way that looked better, to have the shorter ones. And you can see that this it's just those 3 little petals that are extending beyond the scalloped rectangle. You can see that here when I put these down, I had much more of that tulip extending beyond that. So I'm going to keep that in mind, that I really liked the way it looked when I had just those 3 bits here, these 3 little petals sticking above the top there. Now I'm going to make that little tulip lollipop that I talked about. I'm really just going to put a little bit of Tombow there and attach it to the back of my tulip. I'm attaching it so that there's not a gap, but you can still see where the stem is kind of getting a little bit wider there. And once that's on there, I'll put a little bit of Tombow behind my tulip. And I'm going to put it down here on my card base so that just those 3 little petals extend beyond the top of the scalloped rectangle. Okay, I'm not going to adhere this bottom piece down yet, but we'll do that same thing with each of these 3 tulips. Now, when I adhere this, I want these stems to come together in a point down here at the base of my card. That way I can snip them off easily and put my leaves there. So it'll look a bit like this. You can see that there's a little space there, and that's okay. Sometimes that will happen. I'm really just looking at how my tulips are angled here at the top as well. So we have one more to add. Hi, Connie. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Lisa. Glad you're stamping with me today. And we'll add our last one down here. And now I'm just going to gather these stems here at the bottom, and I'm going to snip them off. Just kind of at a little angle is fine. Actually, I think I'll come in from this angle. And we're just going to snip those right off like that. We'll be covering the base there with our leaves. So this first one, if we look at our sample card, you can see that they're both curving kind of in a backwards S shape. One, I put the smaller, the narrower part of the leaf down near the bottom. And the second one, I put the wider part of the leaf down there just so that it didn't look exactly the same. I didn't want it to be just so much of a copy there. And then we'll add some space in between the stems and the leaves. Now I'm not adhering these down yet because I'm going to adhere just the bottom with liquid glue, but I want to put a mini dimensional behind the tops of my leaves. So let me grab those minis. And that just gives it a little bit of dimension without making it too bulky. So we'll put one under the wider part on this one, and under the narrower part on this one. That way we can flip them around. We'll add a little bit of liquid glue. Now the liquid glue, remember, is going to go down here on the base. And I'm going to make it come right to the bottom of my DSP. We'll hold it there for just a couple of seconds. And do the same thing with the other one. So we'll take the back off that dimensional. So now we're ready to do our sentiment strip. For this, I have a 1/2-inch piece of basic white, but you'll want to use whatever fits your sentiment. I'm making another birthday card from this sentiment, comes from this stamp set. I'm using everything right from this set today. So I've done happy birthday. I kind of wonder if get well soon will fit on there because sometimes we need just a variety. I think I'll do get well soon for this one. That way I have a birthday one and a get well one. Now my sentiment is going to be the same color as my DSP in the background, so I'm using Evening Evergreen, but you can use any color that you would like, whatever matches your DSP, or if you want to do it to match your tulips, you could do that as well. We'll just center that. And that is all the stamping. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab 2 of our larger dimensionals. I used the larger ones for this. I'm going to flip my sentiment over and I'm going to place these little cardstock strips right on the back so that they have a little bit of a space in between the 2 pieces of cardstock, but I also don't want them right to the edge of my sentiment. We'll use our dimensionals to hold those down. So the dimensionals will have 2 jobs, to pop up our sentiment, but also hold these little faux ribbon strips down. So that's the way I want them on the back. You can see there's a slight space in between. I'm going to just press them down with 1 finger and put my dimensionals on to hold that in place. And when we flip it over, they're adhered right to the back and we can position this on our card front. I'm going to angle the ends by just using my snips to snip in at an angle so that I'm snipping both of the ribbon strips or both of the cardstock strips. I'll flip it over and do exactly the same thing on this side. Get rid of those little extras. And then we can just pop the backings off our dimensionals and adhere it so that it overlaps our stems on our tulips just a little bit. Now the finishing touch is to just add a few gems. All of the gems that I'm using are from the Rhinestone Waves Basic Jewels. These are so pretty and a lot of these colors will coordinate with so many different designer series papers that you might have. So I'm just going to pull in my Take Your Pick tool and I've added these, which are actually Granny Apple Green, but when we put them here on our card, you can see that they kind of take on whatever shade they are placed on. So let's add a medium green down here, a small one. So with this one, this card, instead of doing 3, I actually did 5. We're still keeping those odd numbers, but adding a few little extras. And then we'll do 1 more up by the top tulip. The outside of our card is done now. Now, we do have a colored card base, so we want to make sure that we have a light color insert to go on the inside. So I'm going to bring back in my basic white. And with this one, you have a choice if you want to stamp on there or if you want to just leave it like that. I didn't stamp for the inside. I wanted to keep these rich colors. If I stamp these on the inside, they're not going to be as rich. So I think I'm going to leave this one just the way it is, but I'll be stamping on the inside of another one of our cards today, because that one will have the stamping on the white for our tulips, and I think it will coordinate nicely. I might actually add like a little strip of DSP or something to the inside of this. To bring some of that color to the inside of our card. Let's see if I have that one here. If I have that darkest color. It's not right here on my work surface, so I'm not sure if I have any of that. Let's see over here. I don't have any of my darkest color, any scraps of that handy, but I might actually add a little bit of this DSP to the inside. I'll have to think on that. But we have our first card finished, so we have a birthday card or a get well soon variation. And remember, I showed you a different color variation as well. We did the Just Jade with the So Saffron, and that's a really pretty combination as well. All right, so we have our first card finished. Let's go ahead and put that aside, and we'll move on to our second card. The second card is our Balmy Blue card base. So this is our second card. We have that Balmy Blue card base with Balmy Blue tulips poking out the side, a strip of our papaya DSP, and a really, really light color combo here. The funny thing is we're using exactly the same colors as we did on this first card, but we get such a different effect when we stamp on basic white. So let's pull in our card pieces now. For this card, you'll need your card base. So we have 5.5 by 8.5 piece of Balmy Blue, scored down the middle at 4 1/4, so it will be an A2 size card when it's finished. We'll need to have an insert. This is optional. This is a really light card base, but I still like to have a white insert on the inside. Maybe we'll put some DSP on the inside of this one. So that's just for the inside. No stamping on that one. Yeah, maybe we'll add some. We'll also need a scrap of basic white. Now on this, we'll be stamping 2 tulips and 2 of the leaves. Whenever I have a card kit, so if you ever purchase card kits from me, my scrap pieces, I try to cut a corner off so that you know that that's not a layer for your card. You know that is a piece that is going to be a scrap. So if you had this in your card kit, you would know that this doesn't have a notch on it, so this is actually a layer for your card. Don't stamp on this one and punch it. That's what your scraps are for. Now for the front of our card, we have a piece of DSP that is 2.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches long. And this is that papaya script that was in the DSP pack. The other pieces are a small piece of our frayed white ribbon. We didn't use this on the first card, but we are using it on the next 2 cards. If you don't have this, you could also substitute a piece of embossed cardstock, maybe embossed basic white, or you could even do some vellum in there. And then just a small scrap of So Saffron. This will be for our sentiment. Let's move these pieces right out of the way and start assembling our card. We'll go ahead and fold our card base. And then I'm going to unfold it again, because when I stamp on this, I want to make sure that it's nice and flat. We'll actually bring in that cushion again to put underneath it so that we can stamp and get a really good impression with our tulips. Now for the placement of the tulips, I'm going to grab a pencil. Had it out and it rolled away on me. So with this, I'm actually going to move this DSP so it's over against my score line. I'm going to lightly mark where that is. So when I move this, I can see that line. On my sample, I'm going to move the DSP over slightly, about 1/8 of an inch. So that pencil mark is going to be completely covered when I move this piece over and adhere it. So I don't need to worry about the pencil line showing. However, it's going to be a great guide for me so that I can keep my tulips kind of where I wanted them. And I know that I love the way this came out on the sample, so I can keep this in mind as my guide. I'm going to use a variety of the tulips and leaves, but it's all going to be stamped with Balmy Blue. So Balmy Blue on Balmy Blue. If you're using a different color, just use a tone on tone and you'll get the same effect. But I have 2 images from the tulip set. These are not the largest ones, so I'm saving the largest for my focal points. And we'll use just these 2 smaller ones for our background here. Now, when I'm stamping something like this and I have 2 images, I will often use one block and I'll put one over towards one side. Oops, I'm a little fuzzy on there. Flip it over so that I can see right where it is, and then put the other one on the other side. This way I can use one block and kind of fill in where I want my images. I'm using just my tulips to fill in most of it, and then I'll have a few little leaves poking through in the gaps. Sample right up out of the way so that I can still see it, but I don't accidentally get ink on it. So that's not the best impression there. I think I had a little bit of an angle there. So I'm going to re-stamp over that and hope for the best. I don't love that. All right. Does that happen to you? Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to fold that in half the other way. That will be covered up with our white insert, and we're going to start fresh. I know this happens to everybody, so why not just show you how we can still use all of these pieces. We'll just start fresh there. And I'll make sure that I'm using even pressure this time. Much better. Now I'm going to add a smaller one, out a little bit. So you can see on my sample here, I really wanted to see those petals. So we're moving this one out just a bit. Flip around and use one of the larger tulips down here. Now I know that a lot of this will be covered up, but that's okay. I think we'll do one more tulip, just poking out a bit, and then fill in with some leaves the rest of the way. All right, so even our leaves are going to be Balmy Blue. Now with this one, I'm using the skinnier leaves instead of the larger curved one. And I can actually even just use one of these because I can use both ends of this leaf. So I have a wider end or I have this really narrow one to kind of fill in those gaps there. So So I'm going to add one right about, oh goodness, I even got a little smudge there. Guess what? We'll put a little rhinestone there. We'll put a jewel there. We'll show you all the tricks for covering up the mistakes today. Now remember, what is to the left of our pencil line is not going to show. So it's okay to overlap things. It's okay if that part doesn't come out perfect because that's going to be behind the DSP anyway. But I just want to fill in some of these little gaps here. Okay, that should be good. We're done with our blue. Now we can go ahead and adhere our DSP down. We'll fold this again. And when we put our DSP down, we'll make sure that we cover up that little pencil line, and it will be about 1/8 of an inch in from the fold of our card. So this is what we'll be left with. If you do have this DSP and you purchased it as part of the entire suite, you could use all of these card designs with the Artfully Composed suite. Trying to think of what that stamp set's called. I have it right here. So the stamp set that this is part of is called Artfully Layered. So if you purchase that whole suite, you could absolutely use all of these layouts, but use the other side of the DSP as well. So that way you get that really tropical look, and you will have cards that look completely different from today's soft tulips without a lot of thinking about the design, because the design part is what is the trickiest for me. All right, so again, we'll cover this up on the inside, but I think we'll do a little bit of stamping on the inside too. We'll set this aside now and pull in this scrap that we had. So with this scrap, we need to have 2 tulips, one that's pale papaya and one that is so saffron. That little peekaboo effect. I know, Connie, it's really cute, isn't it? It's just a way to add a little bit more. Sometimes I like embossing cardstock and putting it on the back, but I thought this was kind of a fun one, and I haven't done this for a while, so this was a great class to bring that back. Try to mix it up a little bit for you guys too, because I know that you want lots of different card designs and ideas as well. So we have our So Saffron, and then our Pale Papaya. These will soften as they dry and blend as well. These are exactly the same stamp pads that I used for my sample, but look at how much brighter they seem until they dry, and then it will soften up. Okay, so let's see. First, I think I will stamp my leaves because I'll use this space over here for stamping these. And those are going to be stamped with the same one that I just used with the Balmy Blue, but this time I'm going to use Pear Pizzazz, and I'm going to stamp off one time because Pear Pizzazz can be kind of a dark color, and I'll show you what it looks like full strength, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we stamp off. So let me just grab a little piece of scrap paper here. A large piece of my grid paper right here. We'll stamp off on this. So when I stamp, it's going to be this darker color, and that's a bit darker than I wanted. So I'm going to stamp off once on scrap paper and then stamp on my basic white, and we get a much lighter color, much lighter variation, which goes really well with these soft pastels or subtles. Speaking of subtles, I wanted to share with you what we're going to do on next weekend. We're doing the Easter Friends class. So before I forget, I want to show that to you now. This is Easter Friends, and we'll be doing this next Sunday. So we have 3 cards that we're going to be using this stamp set with, and it actually uses the Subtles DSP. So there was a reason that I said the Subtles. So these are all the Subtles DSP patterns, and these are 5 out of the 10 colors that you get. So this will be the color scheme, and you can see that those Subtles are so pretty there. Also, these will be the ribbons that we use. This one, oh gosh, I can't remember. I think it's Blushing Bride. And then this one is Misty Moonlight. Misty Moonlight is not one of the Subtles, but these 2 come as a 2-pack in the mini catalog. And this Misty Moonlight looks so pretty with a lot of the Subtles. So this will be the 2-pack of ribbon that we use in that class for Easter Friends next Sunday. All right, let's move this aside. Now, these leaves are the ones that don't coordinate with the punch. So I'm going to quickly fussy cut those, just leaving a slight border around the edge. Hi, Teresa, how are you? Glad that you joined me today. Are you stamping? I don't know how many people are stamping with me today. I haven't asked. Let me know if you're stamping or just watching and we'll stamp later. I know a lot of you kind of multitask on Sundays too, and you'll be watching me while you're folding laundry or watching me while you're coloring. A lot of you color, I think, and then you'll come back and do the stamping after. All right, so we can get rid of that scrap. We have our leaves. Just watching, yeah, just watching. I know you get crafty though. You'll be getting crafty later. All right, so we'll punch out our pale papaya. And then, oh, my tulip punch has been a little sticky today. Notice that. All right, let's cut some of this out so that it will fit down in there. But having that handle there is nice. There we go. Okay, get rid of all of our scraps. We'll keep this nearby in case we need to stamp something else off. Okay, so here is our card base, and we can start adhering our tulips down. Let's see. I can actually move this out of the way because it kind of bugs me when I'm not stamping. All right, so the first thing that's going to go down is this yellow, the So Saffron. We're going to put that right about there, and this will just be with flat adhesive. And then this tulip, our pale papaya tulip, will go down as well. This one will overlap the other one, kind of at an angle the other way. And now we have our 2 leaves. This one, I'm going to tuck down behind this tulip here. But before I do that, I'm going to add one of our mini dimensionals behind that. So I'm doing the same thing with these leaves that I did on the first card. I'm adding a mini dimensional to the end just to give it some dimension, I'll put a little bit of, put this down, a little bit of Tombow adhesive, liquid adhesive down here on the bottom. Pull off our backing. The end that has the adhesive, I'm going to tuck it right behind this other tulip here. And then my leaf will extend out beyond over those stamped tulips. We'll do the same thing with this one as far as adding adhesive to the tail, the part that will be tucked down in. I have my mini dimensional up here. Now this one is going to extend beyond the DSP, but I don't want it to extend beyond my actual card. Now this end that's down on the bottom will be covered up with our sentiment and ribbon. Yes, oh Connie, I have totally done that. Yes, you can use a Post-it note for a handle. Post-it notes are one of my uncrafty craft necessities. They're great for masking, they're great for handles. All right, so we've got this pushed down here and we're ready to add our sentiment and our ribbon. So let's go ahead and put our ribbon down first. I'm going to layer this right over the top here. Now this is just a bit shorter than my card. I think that I did this at 3 3/4. Let me just pull that in. Yep, 3 3/4. And we'll grab some glue dots. You could probably use tear and tape. I have my glue dots right here though. And I'll add probably 3 of them right to the back of my ribbon here, and then just press it onto my card front. This ribbon is so soft. I wanted it to be subtle, but still be part of the focal point. And I think by having it extend beyond the sentiment like that, it looks really nice, and it definitely shows up. This is a nice subtle card. I love the little sentiment too. It says happy Easter, happy spring, happy everything. So kind of goes for lots of occasions. So we just press that down onto our card front. Save these nearby because we'll be using these on our last card as well. And now we'll bring in that sentiment. I'll pull back in my little foam mat and grab So Saffron. I'm going to need this larger block for this one. I think this would be such a pretty card to do with all different subtles prints. So you could use that subtles 6x6 if you don't have this particular DSP, and make them in all kinds of different colors. That's something I might have to try. So we have our sentiment. The sentiment is not going to have any special treatments. It's just going to go right on the front, but we're going to use, let me just make sure. Nope, it's not dimensionals. I was going to say dimensionals. I use just glue dots. Having it on this ribbon pops it up a little bit as it is, so we don't need dimensionals. Glad power. Oops. Glad I didn't put them too far away. So we'll add probably 3 to the back of this one as well. Now I chose Balmy Blue as my background because our rhinestone waves jewels have Balmy Blue in them. And I thought, what a great way to pull in some of the colors from those rhinestone waves jewels. Okay, so we have all of our stamping done. Time to do the fun part, which is adding those jewels. So with this one, again, I did 5. I did a larger one. This is actually the medium size, and then 4 of the small ones. I'll have to change my placement because I do have to cover up my little smudge there. Oops. Sometimes that happens, right? Perfect. And we just add a gem. We go through spells, don't we, as crafters? There was a time when we would add a butterfly. Then the trends were sequins, so we would add a sequin. Today, it's back to gems because that's what's on my workspace. We'll add a few over here. Always an odd number. Today it's 5. And we have our second card finished. That's a really pretty springy color scheme, isn't it? All right, so we'll set this aside and we'll move on to our last card. Now I am bringing in another embellishment for today's card for this one. Now this, my sample, I used the Rhinestone Waves Jewels, but as I was going through my embellishments here, I found my little bumblebees. We're going to add a little bumblebee to our next sample, the one that we make today. I'm not sure, well, I might have to put it down here. I'm not sure, but I brought those out because I thought, how cute would that be on there? So we'll set those aside so that I don't forget to add that on. Okay, this one is going to start with a Just Jade card base. I wanted to pull in the Just Jade from this designer series paper, and we are still using our papaya and coral DSPs as well. We're using the same size card base for all of these, keeping it simple, but this time it's going to be a 10th fold card, so the fold will go on the top. But we're still starting with that 5.5 by 8.5 inch piece of cardstock, scored at 4 1/4, and then folded. Now to create the DSP layers, it's the same technique that we did on our first card, as far as we're putting our DSP on a basic white mat. The only difference is, instead of 1 piece of designer series paper, we're using 3 smaller pieces, and when we put those together, we'll end up with exactly the same finished measurement. Each one of these is 1 3/4 by 4. So it will leave the same size border. I believe it's a 1/16 of an inch border around all sides. So we'll go ahead and add that with liquid glue or whatever favorite flat adhesive you have. I tend to reach for my liquid glue these days because it's always handy. If you're using a tape runner, I recommend Stampin' Seal Plus. It doesn't have the learning curve that I have found Stampin' Seal has. The Plus is much more user-friendly. Plus, it has a much better grip. So it will hold even your 3D paper crafts together. Kind of like tear and tape, but in a tape runner. Now, if you find that you have a hard time lining these up so that they are even, you can always stagger them. I've been staggering them on a few different cards, so you could do that as well. You could also mat them. In Tuesday's class, when we used Whale Done, we staggered them and we used a really narrow mat on them. I don't have that one right here. I've actually moved that to another table here in the studio, but I do have the Hey Chick one here. And that is the one that I cased myself. Now I notice that I have a bit of an extra border here. I'm just going to trim that off slightly. I want that to be even around the edge. It's a bit wider on that edge, and we can totally do that. Okay. Now this is just going to go flat on our card base. This card also, it has a dark card base. We're doing it on just jade, so you could have your second white piece be the insert for your card. I said we were going to stamp on the last one, didn't we? And I didn't do that, so we might have to go back and do that. I will do it on this one when I have my tulips out because I want this to match the inside. Okay, so now we'll set this aside. This smaller piece is 3 3/4 by 2 1/2. So I'm going to have both of these so that I don't forget to stamp on the inside. And we'll do some of that variegated stamping. Okay, so let's grab our small and our medium tulips. We used these with the balmy blue on the last card. This time I'm going to mount them on separate blocks. Last time I mounted them on the same block, but this time I'll do separate ones. And I'll just do them one at a time. I'm going to start with the larger one first. So I'll start with the medium tulip, and I'll pull in my pale papaya and calypso coral. I'm going to move this out of the way, but don't let me forget to stamp that. That will be the inside of our card. Now, I think you can see my ink pads here off to the right. I'm going to ink up my tulip with pale papaya, and I'll do that right from the ink pad. But now I'm going to pull in one of our sponge daubers, and I'm just going to dab it on the darker, the calypso coral, and dab it right directly onto my stamp. And I'll go around the bottom and about halfway up the sides. And you just use a light touch, and this is what we'll get for an effect. A two-tone tulip. That one I didn't put a lot on, so we'll try to add a little bit more on the next one. So we'll ink it up with our light color again, our pale papaya. Add a little bit to the bottom and up the sides. I'm going to leave a space in between so that I can add my smaller tulip there. I'll also pull in that little scrap of grid paper just to put under that side, so that way when I stamp off, it doesn't go on my stamp pad there, my cushion. So you can see that one has a little bit more there. Look how pretty those look together. And I'll do the same thing over on this side, having it come off the left side of my card. So pretty. Okay, so, I'm washing that off, but I've got to do the inside. So while we have this out, let's move this over. This will be our card insert. Instead of going across the entire bottom, this time I think I'll do a little cluster here in the right-hand corner. So I still will be going off the edge, so I'll take that little scrap of grid paper so that it doesn't get on my foam mat. Ink it up with pale papaya and add a little bit of calypso coral around the edge and up the sides. Okay. I think I'll do one of each size on the inside, just as a little cluster in the corner. All right, so we're done with our medium tulip. Now we'll pull in the smallest tulip, and we'll do exactly the same thing. I'll do the one here on the insert first, Ink it with pale papaya and add a little hint of calypso coral. This one I think I'll put up a little bit taller. And now we'll do the same thing here with our smaller piece. Ink it with pale papaya, add some calypso. And this should fit right in between. If we left enough space, I think we did. Looks good. And one more in between here. Then we'll go back and add our stems and leaves just to kind of fill in those spaces. Okay, so we're done with these. Now, one thing that we need to remember to do is stamp off each time that we do a leaf or a stem, because I like the lighter color of the of the pear pizzazz. If we use it full strength, remember, it tends to be pretty dark. So we'll use the stamped off shade. We'll need our longer block for our stem. We won't be using the entire stem, but it will come off the bottom of our panel there. I can see exactly where I'm stamping, so I'll be lining the top of the stem up with the bottom of my tulip. And I forgot to stamp off. Yeah, it's not too bad, not too dark. We'll do them all that way now. It's not too bad. It just won't have quite the softness that our original card did. All right, and we'll fill in those gaps with our leaves. We'll actually do the insert as well. All right, now we can fill in. I'm going to use one of the narrow leaves like I did on my blue card, and I'll use both ends so that way I have two different options for filling in. These leaves will be down near the bottom, just kind of stamped going up and down. So they'll be stamped vertically, not necessarily attached to the flowers, because that part will be covered up. What I want to do is just kind of fill in the gaps there. Just kind of turning it each time that I stamp so that I get a variety of leaves. And we'll do the same thing with our insert. I actually kind of like the darker ones there. Everything happens for a reason. That was an oops, but I kind of like having that variation. Sometimes our oops turn out okay after all. Yeah. Gail, how can you not have this stamp set? It's a must-have. It's carrying over though. I'm glad you're here. I said at the beginning, it's carrying over to our next annual catalog. So that made me happy because I haven't used it enough. I feel like I want to use it a bit more before it retires. So this was perfect. I also picked it for this class because I thought that it was one that a lot of people might already have. I actually like those darker colors. I think it's a nice variation. All right, so this piece right here, this panel is going to get some dimensionals. So we'll pull in our big dimensionals. But you could absolutely do this with any floral stamp set, Gail. I was just saying that these designs today, you could use with so many different florals. You could use it with the artfully layered that goes along with the DSP, but you could do this, you could do it with the daffodils, you could do it with the daisies. I mean, if there's one thing Stampin' Up! Has given us, it's a ton of options for floral stamp sets. And this layout here would work with almost everyone that I can think of. All right, so that's just centered on our card front. While we have our insert right here, I think I'll put this on the inside. We'll use flat adhesive. Make sure it's right side up. That might be an oops that I couldn't fix. Now for the front, I have a 1/2 inch strip. I think this is 1/2 inch by 3. Let me just take a quick peek. Yeah, 1/2 inch by 3. And I did not use just jade. I actually used the Evening Evergreen stamp pad for this. I happened to have it out for my first card, so I used it for this sample, and I loved the way that looked. So I'm pulling in that Evening Evergreen, and my little hello. Let's see, do I have one of my little ones here? I do. We'll use one of our tiny, tiny blocks. Just the right size for this. And I'm just going to stamp hello right in the center. Now for this one, I actually tore the ends a little bit. This kind of has more of a distressed look than our last one. I'm just tearing them off straight. You could do them at an angle or just leave them if you wanted to. And we'll pull in that piece. This is a 3.5 inch piece of the ribbon. So this one's just slightly smaller than on the last card, but I wanted it to be a little bit smaller than our panel. And remember, this panel was 3 3/4. So we're going to use 3.5 and just attach it down with those glue dots again. And then we'll add our little hello with glue dots as well. Probably only need 2. This one's a bit shorter. And that will just go centered. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave off the rhinestones, but these are the rhinestone waves. Those are not in the catalogs. Those are this special collection that's available right now. the Waves of, oh goodness, Waves of the Ocean, I think is the name of the collection, but Waves of Inspiration is the name of the stamp set and bundle. But this collection includes these really pretty gems, the rhinestone waves. But I think that I'm going to add something else. I showed you those cute little bumblebee trinkets. So these are from the annual catalog. I think they were part of the the Pansy Suite. Can't quite remember, but I think they're part of the Pansies. Of course, they are retiring because our annual catalog, most embellishments do not carry over. I'm trying to find where my next mini glue dot is here. These trinkets, you can add the little mini glue dots to the back. They are the perfect adhesive for them. So let's see, do I want it up in the air? Do I want it down here? I don't know, what do you think? Do we want it down by the sentiment? Do we want it up here in the air? I kind of like it up in the air. I think I'm gonna put it up there. We'll add our little glue dot to the back. If you have any of our metal trinkets, glue dots are the thing to adhere them down. So we had ladybugs last year. We've had little tropical little ukuleles and leaves in the past, little palm leaves. Okay, yep, that's pretty cute. I like it up there in the air. What do you think? So these are from the annual catalog, but don't they look great with this? So we have our last card, our variations. This one I did not stamp anything for an insert, but I will put an insert. This one has that really pretty stamped tulip cluster in the corner, which I love. All right, so we have our 3 finished cards. I'm going to clean up my work surface here to show them to you. So we have this one, the variation in the green and the variation in the embellishments. This one we did just the way it was, but I'm going to stamp an insert to cover up my boo-boo, remember, my boo-boo on the inside. And then this one, we did just a sentiment variation, but I showed you a color variation as well. So this was the one we created today. This was the variation if you wanted to use a brighter DSP and have all the same color for your tulips. So let's see, do I have an insert right here? I do. Right here. All right, we're going to stamp something for the inside so that I don't forget. Pull this in, we'll just do a quick one. I liked having those little tulips over on the edge there, so I think I'll probably do that again. Let's see if I can find that little scrap of grid paper. Not sure exactly where I tucked that. Not a clue. Oh, I actually threw it in my scrap bin. All right, so let's do that. Maybe we'll stamp, I kind of like the little ones down there. So I think we'll do the same thing with our little ones, but we'll do them with just one color instead of doing that variegated look. Find my larger block here. We'll do the same colors that we did on the outside. We'll do pale papaya with our larger one. And so saffron with the tiny one. This time I have to remember to stamp off my pear pizzazz though, because the outside is stamped off. I'm so glad you like them, guys. Not only that, but we are like right on time. I try to get you out of here in 90 minutes, but I'll be honest, I don't actually remember to look at the time until the very end. So when we end on time, it's purely luck. I never time myself when I'm making cards. They just kind of, you know, I'll take about a half hour or so. Almost forgot to stamp off on that one. There. That'll cover up the boo-boo on the inside. No one will ever know, right? Remember that next Sunday we'll be making the Easter cards. So Easter Friends is the stamp set. If you don't have that one, pull in any little critter or Easter set that you have. Anything that would work for images like that. So there we have our second card finished. So I'll pull that stamp set in again. And I'll also remind you of my ordering special. So my ordering special this month is with any $50 purchase. You don't need to use a host code. Any $50 purchase, I'll send you a package of the Rhinestone Waves Basic Jewels. And this is our stamp set for next Sunday, Easter Friends, from our mini catalog. This is the January to June mini. So we'll be using some of our blends for this. Haven't decided yet which blends. I'll post those in a little bit. But if you don't have Stampin' Blends and you want to use watercolor pencils or your blender pen and inks, you can use any of those as well. Just adjust your inks accordingly, okay? All right, thank you so much, and I will see you then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.